This will be recording number 2 of the evening, and for this session I wanted to dive into a couple things. Before we started tonight and everyone got here, I was showing, I need to show my screen. Yeah, it's okay to yell at me. People on Skype are like, I can't see anything. People in the room are like, I can't see anything, and Eric's just looking great tonight. How's that? Can you folks online see the screen for me?
Yes, we can.
All right, and Eric, I think you left the mouse up there. Okay. Yeah.
You want to borrow it?
I mean, I figure you might want it.
I'll need it tomorrow.
It's peripheral. They get lost easily. All right, so Eric was talking about the SharePoint framework, and one of the things I wanted to talk about real quick and touch on as a solid follow-up to that was this Quick Links web part you see that has some content in it, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, and so on. This is a custom web part that we at Catapult have developed using the SharePoint framework. It pulls data in from a SharePoint list and just shows it a nice, something customers usually like to have is what we call Quick Links with a nice tile format. Well, in the classic experience, we could create this, but if you as my customer wanted it changed, you'd hire me as a developer to go hack apart all the code and make it yours. And then you had your own custom one-off version of this thing. Not anymore. Because with the SharePoint framework, in the modern experience and the classic experience, we have the ability to edit a web part and put configuration things in this configuration panel to change how this behaves. So maybe we want it to be vertical instead of horizontal. We can quickly change it. We want to use some crazy custom colors with it that look horrible or good. Or just, you know, in SharePoint we have these themes, right? So if I want to change the look and use a nice red theme instead of that default blue one, our customized features, as we build them with the framework, can reflect that theme. So now, at a glance, you might say, well, that looks like it's part of SharePoint. That's kind of the goal, right? To give you something that you can drop on a site that looks like it's meant to be there. So the SharePoint framework gives us the ability to do this. And let me pull up another site real quick. Eric Skaggs Team Test, Eric Skaggs Classic 01. There's some sort of a URL naming convention going on here that helps me find things. And as we develop our features, we tend to test them in different areas, right? We test it in the classic experience, we test it in the modern experience. So there's the old, I say old here, the old Quick Links web part. Okay? And if I were to, and when I say the old Quick Links web part, I mean this is Fuse Classic. This is the classic experience. That's the classic version of the Quick Links web part. Let's see if I have a site page here. There's one here. So this is a modern page and a classic site. You gotta do some feature manipulation there to make that happen. And then if I'm lucky, and I've got this set up, I could maybe, I can add my, I don't have the Quick Links web part added here. So I'll reiterate. This web part you see, this modern web part with this modern user interface, that modern look and feel, and the configuration panel over here on the right-hand side, I can use this in a classic site. So to build a web part that has all this configuration stuff fully client-side was not possible before the SharePoint framework. And so now it is. And it has definitely bridged the gap between modern and classic. We've got customers who are on classic. And they're like, I don't know what modern is, and I don't want to deal with it because that's user training I don't have time for it. Right? So we say, that's fine. We have a new feature, and it's the modern version of the Quick Links you already use. And we show it to them, and they're like, yeah, that's better. Because I can actually do things on my own without having to hire you to come change my code and use flex hours or whatever. So some cool advantages there. I wanted to touch on that because I think it was a good segue from Eric's presentation. What I really wanted to focus on for this conversation, though, was list and view formatting. So, out here in the world of GitHub, if you go out to github.com/SharePoint, whoa, okay, there it is, github.com/SharePoint. It's your starting point for all the SharePoint open sourceness that we have, and that's where you'll find a lot of stuff by the P&P group, the Patterns and Practices group. And so there are several code repositories out here, and do not be afraid of the word code or repository or GitHub. It's not as ominous as it sounds or looks if you're not familiar with it. If you come out here, there's a little find a repository box, and just do a search for, you can just do a search for formatting, and there's the code repository for, it's called SP-Dev List Formatting. It allows you to format your views of your data. We all know what a list is, right? Rows and columns of data. Excel in the browser. So a view of a list is how we look at the data. We see rows and columns, but then we can sort, group, filter, and all that stuff, right? We've never had the power to make it more meaningful while we're in the list. You go to the list, you pick a view, you see rows and columns of data, right? That's all different now. We have some really cool and exciting options thanks to this list formatting, thanks to the modern experience. Okay? So you'd want to have a modern list, which is a normal list. If you create a new list and your site's already modern, it will be a modern list. But if you have a classic list, you can enable the modern view of the list, the modern list experience, and that'll give you these capabilities. Okay? So let's take a look at what's in here. And the most prevalent author of content in here is Chris Kent. He's out here listed as the Chris Kent. Everyone's got their own personal handle for their GitHub account. He's the Chris Kent. And they go through and they show you some samples. So there's the one that Eric was showing, where you have some, you can see it better probably on these smaller screens, but the green, red, yellow, formatted. You're looking at rows and columns of data, no? You are in the list, looking at the list. But now you can see something more meaningful than just rows and columns of data that you have to process with your brain. Visually, oh, book a fancy dinner for the team, that's already done, I don't have to worry about it. Green, right? But I do need to lock down the demo environment. It says it's blocked, I'm not sure what that means in this sample, but it's red, so that's not good. Right? Anybody can come out here and can contribute samples, which is really cool. This is open source stuff. So a little shamelessness from me. I'm going to plug one that I created, and this is Microsoft Teams. Okay? So as we've pushed out updates to our customers for Fuse, we track it in a good old SharePoint list. Okay? And I talked to my team about this, and we were going over, everyone's got their own opinion. I want this, I want that, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm Eric, and I have my own way of doing things, and I want my own thing, right? Anybody remember personal views? They're still around. And you know what you can do is you can format personal views. So I was like, you know what? Let them do what they want. I'm going to do what I want. And this made me really happy because I created my own view here, Eric Personal. And these are all complete, so they're all shaded gray. Okay? If I were to edit one and change it to red, in progress or ready or awaiting approval, I could associate those statuses of these items with a different color. Now, what's really cool about this is I'm in the Microsoft Teams interface. I'm looking at a SharePoint list, kind of in a framed window. I don't want to say it's an iframe, but maybe it is. I don't know how it works behind the scenes. All I know is SharePoint's here next to my conversations and my wiki and everything else, right? And I can click on these and edit them live here. These are just big fancy buttons. I'm not going to click on them because there's customer info behind here, but this is what I did, okay? And this is a real world scenario that worked for me when I was learning a little bit about list formatting, attending the PMP call. They've got a call once a week. They have a monthly call. They have JavaScript special interest group, a SharePoint framework special interest group. Lots of good calls there. But back to my train of thought here. Out here in the list of, in the repository, you have column samples. So a view of a list of rows and columns. Maybe you only want to format a certain column. You can do that. That's what this sample is showing here. The effort column is formatted, shaded based on progress. The status column here is formatted in this view. The assigned to column is formatted with the little email envelope link. So you can click on it and send somebody an email directly there from within the list. Some really cool stuff. Instead of putting all the data in the list, then having to go build a page, and then put the data on the page and make it look the way you want it, and probably pull your hair out, there are ways we can do it directly in the list. Now, it is JSON. It is code-based. It is frustrating at times, but it's a lot easier to do. Shameless plug for me, I did contribute one of these samples based on what I did. I did this for me because of work, so I called it just choice conditional format, and that's what it is. Conditional formatting based on a choice field. So the choice field in this case is called status, and there's 4 statuses for awaiting approval, complete, in progress, or ready, and the colors you can set accordingly depending on that status. So you go change the data, the colors change automatically. I think it does work if you add it to a web part, or that's coming. Do you recall? I know there's been a lot of this going on in the PMP call there.
Yeah, it should. If you can use the same JSON file to modify your web parts in SharePoint framework. There's no reason why you can be able to add that to all of them.
So I put together a couple quick samples while Eric was talking, and I literally did this sitting there while I was recording the other session. So hopefully it recorded you and not me. Should have. We'll find out. But here's the list. Feature, release schedule, rows and columns of data, right? Not a whole lot of info in here. But this is the all items view, and I can put together a separate view that has some formatting around it. Okay? And these are just big buttons, so I can click on customer A, that opens it up, and I can edit and then change its status to complete. And just like that, it updates. I will show you that in a moment. Yes, yes. No worries. You're fine. You're fine. But that's kind of the premise here is you can interact with the data directly, change its status, and its color changes. So now, us being visual creatures, most of us, right? I can now see I'm drawn to certain things based on their status, which is really cool. Now, the actual view format for this, so I'm looking at a view, and when we want to edit a view in SharePoint, we typically go to this view dropdown, and you'll see down here at the bottom, there's a link to format current view. So if we click on that, it opens up this panel, gives you a nice link to go learn about JSON and formatting, all this fun stuff. And I've actually pulled this out here into Visual Studio Code, and we'll do one of these. And do one of those. And so there's definitely some formatting stuff in here, some syntax stuff that you're going to have to deal with. But essentially, we've got a row formatter, and then there's a custom row action. So, something happens when I click on it. And then I've got attributes, children, styles. Okay. So this is basically saying for each item, show the title of the content. There's the status. You represent a column with the $ column name. So, obviously you don't want to dive into this too much right here in this particular example. The best thing you can do to get familiar with this is to go do it. And the best way to go do it is to use these samples. Now, you can click on any of these folders to view a sample. And I do. I recommend clicking on some of them. This contact card one is really cool because we all know what a contact list looks like. How's that? So in the last 20 minutes or so, I created a list called Cool Contacts. There's one in there. So that's always nice looking, right? Rows and columns of data. Sift through that. Good luck. I created another view where I applied the formatting. Essentially, so question in the room was, can you just take the code, copy, paste, and use it? And mostly the answer is yes, because of these samples and the way they're put together. So what I would recommend, if something catches your eye and you're like, that's really cool looking, this is the first time I, as Eric Skaggs, have implemented this format. I knew of it, and I was like, let me see if I can do it inside 20 minutes while Eric wraps up. So I came down here and I was looking through the documentation, and it says, here are the requirements for your view. Here are the columns that you need. So I created a list called Cool Contact. I quickly added all these. I put one data entry in there for my info instead of making up 10 people, right? And then I literally came up here. The file of interest is the JSON file. I opened it up, and the way you can do that in GitHub is click on it, and you can manually drag and copy it. I tend to click on this raw button here. You can see that okay? It gives you the raw content without all the website stuff. And here you can just do Control-AC, copy all that. I brought it right over to the view, format the view, paste it in there, and that was it. Saved it, and it took effect. So, pretty cool. I mean, so good question. Any security concerns taking stuff from GitHub? Sure. Probably. I would definitely recommend any code you copy anywhere from the internet. I was actually talking to somebody I work with today about this, who's, a newer dev to just development in general. Like, it's great that you can copy and paste code from online, but copy it and get it to work, but then make sure you understand what you're doing and what it's doing, and you're going to have to review it, clean it up, tweak it, whatever. This is JSON, so it's not like JavaScript executing on the client side, manipulating things, and there are also things in here that are not allowed. I don't know the list offhand, but there are things you can do and things you cannot do. And there's a lot of stuff out there on user voice that has been requested to be added. So, but I think it's pretty cool stuff. Definitely can be handy, especially when you have your own way that you want to work, to create your personal view, do your thing, and everyone else can do it theirs. So, let me pause there. Keep that